there are 7 Seahawks named in PFF's top 150 free agents for 2024. Now, it's a very interesting offseason for the Seahawks. There's a lot of questions about Geno Smith because they're bringing him on in his 2024 contract, but as GM John Schneider has said, he is the starter till he's not. So people are wondering, what are they going to do at the draft? People are wondering about a lot of players on the team like Draymond Jones, Jamal Adams, and a lot of other guys that trading them or cutting them pre or post June 1st, just depending on what the situation is, could save a lot of money because our salary cap situation currently sits at $12 million, and that is with the salary cap increase that happened this year. The biggest increase we've seen in a long time. We're still kind of behind, and we still have to give money to draft picks. So it's very interesting to look at our situation considering we do have 7 free agents that are named on PFF's top 150 of 2024. And I'm obviously, for the sake of content, I'm going backwards. We're going to start with number 7. Number 7, he was at number 138 on PFF's list, was Darell Taylor. Now, here are his edge rushing rankings in PFF this year. He was at 103 out of 112. He had a 45 grade in rush defense, a 58 grade in pass rush, and a 50 grade overall. To put that in perspective, 50 is a small number. I mean, if you're not too familiar, let's just look at, I'll give you an example on defense. Leonard Williams in his 10 games with us was at a 76.9 overall. Boye Mafe was at a 73. Julian Love, 72. I mean, there's not much. Darell Taylor is at 31 out of 37 on the Seahawks defense. 50.9 is, near the bottom. We've had some tougher ones. Derek Hall had a rough year, but it's pretty low down there. So not the best season for him, or not necessarily the best overall situation as a draft pick for the Seahawks. Now, I actually think this is one of those situations where if you're going to get him on as cheap as a contract as humanly possible, if any team's going to do that, it would be the Seahawks, the team that drafted him and probably has a little more belief in his talent and his skill than other teams do. So that one's kind of a toss-up because I don't know what he's expecting to make. I don't know if he has any interest by anybody else even. I know it's kind of hard when you're in that type of situation where you're not this super-duper high-level player. I don't know where the interest lies elsewhere. And I know that if anybody, like I said, believes in him, it's probably the Seattle Seahawks. So we'll see what happens there. But he's 138 out of 150 on the PFF free agents list. Coming in at, I don't know why this one doesn't have a number, but he's the next up. Is center Evan Brown. He was ranked 27 out of 36 qualifying centers in the NFL. Pass blocking graded at 59, run blocking 57, overall 55.5. Now I have the PFF up for the offense. Let's see where he lands. 26 out of 31 qualified players. Now, below him is Jason Peters, who's 42 years old, came on for 8 games. Olusegun Oluwatumi, we got him in the 5th round last year, center, I believe 5th round or 6th maybe even. He was below him. Abraham Lucas, 6 games, was below him. Rough season. It was injuries. Phil Hayes and Anthony Bradford. On the offense in general, there was a lot of people and a lot of offensive linemen higher than him. Jake Curran had a better grade. Stone Forsythe. Damen Lewis had a better grade. Who else? Charles Cross, of course, had a better grade. So it was not the best season at center for the Seahawks. And this is an interesting one as well because I have a slight feeling that we're looking at, what's his name, Jackson Powers from Oregon. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen with Evan Brown and the center position. I feel like the center position has been a rotating issue ever since like Max Unger, like 10 years ago. I think he was part of the Jimmy Graham trade to the Saints. Like when we got Jimmy Graham from the Saints, this is one that I'm not even going to comment too much on because at the end of the day, I'm not sure what's going to happen at the center position. I think we might go draft and see or give Olusegun Oluwatumi a chance this year because he was one of the best centers in college football at Michigan a year ago. And we drafted him last year. Maybe give him a go if we don't take a top-notch center in the draft. Now, another one on the offensive line. Damen Lewis, 84th out of 150 on PFF's top 150 free agent. So he's actually a little higher up there. He was rated 37 out of 79 guards on PFF's grading, a 63 pass blocking grade, run blocking at 57, overall 59.6. So this is where it starts to get interesting. Obviously, offensive line has been something tricky for the Seahawks over the last 5, 6, 7 years, something that we haven't figured out since the Super Bowl days, right? Since both times we were Super Bowl contenders. When we were when we almost won a Super Bowl in the early 2000s, we had Hall of Famers on our offensive line. With Hutchinson, with Walter Jones. I mean, we're talking about Hall of Fame talent and some of the best offensive linemen ever. And then we had a great offensive line during this. We had an amazing run game. Russell was protected. The offensive line had some Pro Bowlers on there, all pros. I mentioned Max Unger before. We need to get back to having a good offensive line. Damen Lewis, I think, should be somebody that's going to be considered to obviously re-sign with the Seahawks. I don't know how we're planning to attack this in the draft, offensive line-wise, but if offensive line is not something that we fully attack in the draft, then you got to assume somebody like Damen Lewis will be back with the Seahawks. Especially, like I said, with Evan Brown, you don't know because we drafted a center last year. Maybe you just go with Alou. But with Damen Lewis, left guard, he's rated 84 out of 150 top free agents by PFF this offseason. I think you have to go sign him. It's not going to be that expensive, and you got to find a way to keep the offensive line good. Now we get to the emotional ones. Number 58 out of 150 on their free agent list is Bobby Wagner. Wagner, run defense a 91 grade last year, pass rush 75, coverage 60, overall 82.4. He was ranked 7 out of 82 linebackers. This is so hard because every year everyone tries to say Bobby Wagner's regressed or he's not as good or he's not fit for our system anymore. But I know there's some flaws, as you can see in the coverage. He had bad coverage grade. He was not great in the passing game. He was great in the run defense, but in the passing defense, not good. And it might not work in our new system with Mike McDonald. I don't know. They know better than us, obviously. I can give my opinion all day. But until you could break it down to John Schneider and Mike McDonald, the real experts, I'm not going to know if they see him as a fit or not. But what I know is, once again, he was one of the top 5 to 10 linebackers in the NFL. He left to the Rams for a year because, the Seahawks were assuming it's probably not worth the money. He's regressing. They saw that he was with the Rams. He's not regressing as bad as we thought. And so let's bring him back. And then again this year, he had a good season. I'm not saying he's the same Bobby Wagner as 2013, 14, 15 Bobby Wagner. But he is still one of the top 10 linebackers in the NFL. And if you ask me, you got to find a way to bring him back. Now, I think it also depends on what his plans are. I want to see Bobby Wagner emotionally retire as a Seattle Seahawk. So do they find a way to bring him back on a 1 or 2 year deal? I know this year was a 1 year deal, but maybe you get a 2 year deal, tell him you can finish here. Or is Bobby Wagner seeing this himself as hey, dude, I still got 2, 3, 4 years. People are trying to write me off and I'm not writing back. Zing. Or I don't know what he's exactly thinking, right? So I don't know if he's thinking, yeah, this is my last year or two, or if he thinks I got way more time in me than people keep trying to assume, because it keeps being an assumption, and the assumptions continue to be kind of wrong by the fans, by media, whatever you call it. I say you got to bring him back. It also depends. I made a video, at my Sammy on Tap channel, my personal YouTube channel. You can find him in the description here, about Patrick Queen. There's obviously connections from Baltimore. Mike McDonald loves Patrick Queen. Patrick Queen made a lot of good comments about him as the new coach of the Seahawks. The question is, for the price, do you want Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks for the same price as Patrick Queen? Or do you want Patrick Queen by himself? That's where it gets tricky. At the end of the day, I think it's all going to depend on that, because you can get Jordan Brooks and Bobby Wagner both back probably for the same price as Patrick Queen and run it back, at least see what happens. But you never know how they feel about Patrick Queen or the coaching staff, especially because he's coming from Baltimore. Number 3 on the list is also number 53 out of the 150 on the PFF list. I'm saying number 3 on the Seahawks list, like third highest. But 53 out of 150 for the PFF list is tight end Noah Fant. He had a 64 receiving grade, 62 overall. He was ranked 30 out of 72 in tight ends. Now, with all due love and respect for Noah Fant, he was a part of the Russell Wilson trade. If you ask me humbly, I would say, yeah, I would like to have him back, but I think he's a decent enough tight end where he might get a decent enough contract. And considering the fact that we still have Parkinson and Will Dissly, I'm sure if I'm forgetting one, we probably have another tight end on the roster that I'm forgetting, because we always have tight ends. I just don't understand situationally why we would probably slightly overpay for a tight end that we're not utilizing very well. Noah Fant should be getting a lot more play, a lot more catches, and being a bigger part of our offense. I don't know if that's it was an offensive, situational issue, like the scheme of the offense, or if it was a Geno Smith thing. He's just not looking at tight ends. He's not a big safety net guy. I'm not sure what it was, but you would feel like somebody as good as Noah Fant's supposed to be would end up getting more catches, making more of an impact. But I think with having Will Dissly, like I said, and Parkinson and so many other pieces, you can always find a way to piece together the tight end room for now, rather than probably overpay for somebody that was ranked 30 out of 72 in the tight end situation. But as always, comment below if you disagree, because I don't care if you disagree. I like to hear other options. I always say this, it's a coin thing you'll hear on my YouTube channel. I would love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong about anything I say on here, and the Seahawks do it differently and they go win a Super Bowl and I was wrong, because I'd be happy that they did well. I'm not in the being right business. I'm in an opinion business here and trying to, give you my opinion and thoughts. But before we continue to the last 2 on the list, please check out the links in the description. We have a Mariners on Tap channel. We just did a couple really good podcasts with some big Mariners creators from Locked On Mariners. And we had another one from Foul Territory and Scott Braun. So check that out. Links are all in the description. We have some big podcasts coming up on this channel, on Seattle on Tap. We have a Huskies channel, Mariners channel, my personal, George, my brother and co-host of the podcast. His channels are down there. So check those out. Also, SeattleOnTap.com. Make sure you go put your email in there. We're going to start sending emails about what the new memberships things are going to be on this channel. Maybe some Discord channels. We have merchandise. We're going to send Seattle sports news left and right. So get at SeattleOnTap.com. Make sure you put your email in the box right there on the homepage. I love y'all. Back to the list. Number 2, and he's number 50 out of 150 on the list, and I've brought him up already, so I'm not going to over-talk about him, is Jordan Brooks. Jordan Brooks, run defense, 49.3 grade, like the opposite of where Bobby Wagner was. In coverage, he was at a 59.9. Pass rush, 85. That's his highest score there. And his linebacker ranking was 69 out of 182. Now, I think he's 50 out of 150 on the PFF list. I think his PFF scores, or maybe even just his statistics in general, probably underplayed his presence on the field. At the end of the day, sometimes grading statistics don't show everything. I do think, having Bobby Wagner out there, him and Bobby Wagner, it is a decent linebacking core. Now, am I saying it's the 49ers level or the Ravens level last year? Absolutely not. I'm not that biased where I'm saying that this is the best linebacking core in football. But once again, as I was breaking it down on my Sammy on Tap channel, the Patrick Queen video, Patrick Queen's looking at a potential $20 million a year contract, while Jordan Brooks is looking maybe at a 10-ish a year, and Bobby Wagner's looking at 5-ish per year, potentially market value-wise. Do you prefer to have 2 decent linebackers for $15 million a year when Jordan Brooks and Bobby Wagner, or one Patrick Queen at $20 million a year? That's where this is going to get interesting to see if Jordan Brooks ends up with the Seahawks or not. And I think, again, like I've mentioned multiple times, I think it's going to be Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks together. You see them both sign with the Seahawks, or you're going to see neither. And then we're going to have a complete revamp, even if it's not Patrick Queen. It's going to be a complete revamp of the linebacker position. And these are some big decisions as a new solo GM for John Schneider and a new coaching staff. John Schneider was not making all the final says on personnel. Pete Carroll made a lot of final say on personnel. Now it's John Schneider. So it's interesting to see where he's going to end up compared to what it would have been if Pete Carroll was there. I don't know what he's going to decide, if they're kind of revamping a lot of parts of the defense or they're trying to run it back. That's where it's going to be really interesting. And of course, number one for the Seahawks, and I want him back, but he is number 16 on the top 150 free agents according to PFF this NFL season. Number 16 out of 150. Defensive lineman, Leonard Williams, Big Cat, mid-season trade, 18 games this year. He's one of the first guys since I think the 1960s to play 18 games because he caught the Giants before a bye week. He left the Giants before they've had their bye week and after the Seahawks already had there, so he played 18 full games this year. He ranked 22 out of 130 on defensive lineman rankings on PFF. He had a 68.5 run defense grade, a 76.2 pass rush, and a 76.2 overall grade. 22 out of 130 in defensive line. As you know, the Seahawks have struggled to have great pressure from the defensive line. Now, we have good edge rushers now with Uchenna Nwasu coming back, with Boye Mafe there. We have some really good pieces on the edge. If you can, somebody like Big Cat Leonard Williams, he's very versatile. He kind of can kind of move around different spots. He's not your typical interior big man like Chris Jones or Aaron Donald type of guy. He's also not a typical edge guy. He's kind of like a hybrid in some ways. He's great to have on a defensive line. Now, obviously, if he's overpriced, you're not going to see him end up with the Seahawks because their cap space is limited. But if they can get him for a really good market value, and I'm going to look up his actual market value right now because it's going to tell us a lot. Excuse the clicking. All right. Leonard Williams. He is at a market value, according to Sport Track, of $16.7 million per year. And we're going to look at that compared to statistical comparison type of people. They're comparing him to that he would have a 3-year, $50 million contract. That's compared to, they're comparing him to his 1-year stats of a DeMarcus Lawrence back in 2020. This was not there it is, sorry. DeMarcus Lawrence when he was 29, and remember Leonard Williams is 29 years old. DeMarcus Lawrence got a 3-year, $40 million back then, $13 million a year. Grady Jarrett got a 3-year, $50 million. These are kind of the comparisons that Sport Track's looking at. He got a defensive end ranking of 9 on Sport Track and a $16 million salary per year. Now, I'm interested in over the cap as well. Over the cap has his career annual pay has been around $12 million. I'm wondering they're not giving a market value. That's fine. It's going to be interesting. He played 18 games this year, 37 solo tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 16 QB hits, 5.5 sacks, which was third most in his career, at 11.5 sacks in 2020, which is just insane, and then 6.5 in 2021. But 18 games this year, 5.5 sacks. It was a great season. A lot of QB hits, pass deflections, a lot of solo tackles. I think it's the most ever in his career solo tackles. 67% of snaps on defense and 22% on special teams this year. So he's playing a lot on the Seahawks this year and Giants on the mix. But $16 million is a lot for a team that still has a lot of salary cap issues to figure out. I'm hoping Leonard Williams ends up with the Seahawks out of anybody on this list. Bobby Wagner and Leonard Williams especially. Bobby Wagner's probably an emotional reason more than just forget the numbers for a second. That's just an emotional decision. Leonard Williams, it'd be nice to have a presence like that on the defensive line for another few years, along with Boye Mafe and Nwasu. So I'd love to see the Seahawks do it. I'm not 100% sure if they will or not, but we can at least hope. I hope you guys enjoy this. like and subscribe below. It means the world to me, and we'll be back next time. Peace.